So when I originally started this channel back in early 2018, I don't know if you were around then, you probably remember this, but many of you probably don't, right? Because I think there's really only a handful of people that are with me now that were with me back then when I was recording videos in my kitchen. But in these early videos, I was very hesitant and very reluctant to talk about comics. And it was a channel talking about comics, but it was basically me and like 4 other people, and I'm actually very thankful for some of that very slow start to my channel, because I think it gave me an opportunity to kind of get my bearings. And it allowed me to get a little bit of comfort with talking about comics. And some people may be surprised by that statement of getting comfortable talking about comics. But let me explain. Let me explain why I say that. When I went on camera in early 2018, I was talking about and saying things that I had never actually said out loud before, ever. I used the word Galactus for the first time out loud in a video. Didn't practice it, just went on camera, said it to the best of my ability. And honestly, I don't think I pronounced his name correctly. I uttered the word Thanos for the first time in a video, didn't practice it, you pronounced it to the best of my ability, and was very quickly and very promptly corrected on the pronunciation of that word, that name, by, one of the 5 people that actually watched that video. But my point here is that when I started with this channel in early 2018, I was talking about things that I had never really spoken about out loud before. Up until that point, very few people that knew me even knew I had collected comics. Very few people knew that I even liked comics. Right? Part of me, people may find this hard to believe, I am actually an introvert by nature. And it was worse when I was a kid. But I didn't necessarily grow up with this large group of friends that sat around talking about and debating comics with. As a kid, I remember going to cons and getting signatures from artists like Mark Bagley and Ed McGuinness, Dale Keown, not Ed McGuinness, but Dale Keown, and from others. And I, for the life of me, cannot remember actually ever speaking to them because I was a shy kid. But there were things, that I was involved in as a younger person that I never shared with anyone. And as I got older, I kept those things to myself still. There was in my opinion, and to some degree or another still is, a little bit of a stigma associated with comic books. And for that reason, I was very reluctant to actually talk about it. I was very reluctant to actually tell people that I liked comics because it was nerd stuff, my mother, fantastic person, didn't necessarily understand why I spent money on comics and why I wanted to go to cons and why I wanted to go to comic shops and why I wanted to do this related to comics. And so it was really tough. She tried to be supportive, but she didn't quite get it, and no one really did. I had a brother who was younger, but he was 6 years younger. And so he wasn't really into comics either. He was more of a sports guy and that was his thing. And so I grew up never really talking about comics or sharing this love for comics that I actually had. And there was a long period of time where I basically got away from comics, like most people, right? When, the 90s, I went away to college and I forgot all about comics. And at one point, much later in life, my collection came back to me from my parents' house and I dabbled in comics a little bit and I would go to the comic shop and occasionally, hang out a little bit, but I still never really got deep into it. And it wasn't until, 2017 that I was in comics again and started getting a little deeper into the hobby. And it was around this time that I basically decided, after watching videos for like months, like every morning I would get up and I would have breakfast. And while I had breakfast, I would watch comic related videos. And I watched guys like Jim's Comics and Jim Mint. Those were, and then Sell My Comics. I love Sell My Comics. I used to sit and I used to watch these videos every single morning for months. And then I would watch occasionally some other YouTubers. And I decided one day that I was just going to make a video. And I did it. And, you know, as you already heard, I mispronounced a lot of things. I was very hesitant to talk about things. I was very, very scripted in my approach to it. And I was scripted because I wanted to do a good job and because I had never really spoken about these things before. And it's a little different now. Now I can sit down to a microphone and I can just rip. You know, I may have a note or two, but I can honestly just rip it. And more often than not, it turns out okay. But my point here is that even now, I am sometimes a little hesitant to let people know that I collect comics, that I read comics, that comics is something that I'm passionate about, because I still hang on a little bit to what I experienced as a kid in terms of it not being cool, it being more nerd stuff. You know, even now I'm still a little hesitant where people, even family, will ask me about my collection and I'm a little hesitant to actually talk about it. And it's very different now, you know, because I'm an adult and you know, it's all good. And people are asking not because they want to make fun or tease or anything like that, but still in the back of my mind, I'm still a little hesitant to talk about it. And I mean, heck, I have a YouTube channel where I literally go on air live and talk to people all around the world. And who knows who these people are that watch and listen, but it's different. It's different when it's real life, if you will, and someone is standing across from you and having this conversation and, you know, ask you a question and they're like, oh, you read comics. There is that moment where I'm like, do I want to tell them that I like comics? and I'm getting more and more comfortable with sharing that side of me, because part of it is it that I'm still holding on to the stigma associated with comics from my childhood, or is it still my introverted nature of keeping my stuff to myself? I'm still trying to figure that out. But while I'm thinking about that, I am getting a little more comfortable with saying to people, yeah, I read comics, and yeah, I have a channel on YouTube, and yeah, the channel is actually about comics, and I have a lot of fun. I'm getting more and more comfortable with that idea. And maybe that's a sign of, you know, getting a little older and not necessarily caring. And I don't want that to be heard in the wrong way, but being more comfortable with self and being more comfortable with who I am and what my actual interests are. And I honestly don't know whether, you know, you guys have experienced any of what I'm trying to describe here. And I'm definitely curious, like, if you are, like, share your thoughts with that. You know, do you tell people that you collect comics, that you read comics? Does your family know that you read comics? What about your friends and your coworkers? I mean, I'm honestly just curious about that. And I think maybe through sharing some of this stuff, we can actually help one another. Maybe we can all get a little more comfortable, you know, with sharing this hobby and this thing that we're so passionate about with more people. I don't know. I was inspired just a little bit to record this video by some messages that I've received from people that have spoken on this very topic to me. And it was kind of a topic that was in the back of my mind already. And then when you start to get messages from people that hit on those same kind of notes, it gives you a little bit of motivation to say, maybe there's something there. Maybe I need to take a moment to actually talk about this, because maybe more of us feel this way. And maybe by talking about it, it might help us to get more comfortable with this hobby and with telling people that this is what we enjoy. You know, I almost think about like gamers and people that collect toys. I don't know how those people share with the larger community. You know, there's almost this thing that, you know, when I became a man, I put away my childish things, where people view games and toys and comics as childish things. But I don't really know that they are. I really don't know that they are. If you look at some of these comics that came out back in the day, those were not comics for children. Those were comics for grown men and women, you know? But there is that stigma that these are childish things. But again, I don't know. I'm curious to hear what you guys are, think about this. Because again, maybe there's something that we can learn from one another here. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. I want to thank you guys, as always, for giving me a forum to kind of talk about these things. I hope that we can kind of mix it up in the comment section, have a little bit of dialogue about maybe the pros and cons of doing this. Maybe some people have done it and done it really successfully, and they can kind of share that. Maybe some folks can talk about their hesitations, and others can comment and help folks to see what a path forward might be. Because I don't have all the answers. I don't profess to, but I think that as a community, as a group of people, we could potentially help one another make some progress. So with that, if you guys need to reach out to me, feel free to do so at RegieCollects on Instagram, at RegieCollects@gmail.com. And again, thank you for listening. I definitely appreciate it. Take care.